Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome back. Today we're talking about must-know safety strategies for smart, savvy agents. And I want to start out by saying that we published this, we're producing this podcast for you because we had one of our coaching clients that unfortunately, nothing bad, really overly bad happened, but she did have an issue when she was showing her property. And so it motivated us to dust off this topic and present it to all of you. Now, here's what I want you to consider doing with this topic. Obviously, use it for yourself primarily, and then share it with all the other agents in your community. Post this on Facebook. Post this on Instagram. If you're a broker, if you're a team, doesn't matter. Send a link to this podcast or send a link to this video if you're watching us over on YouTube. So these are some, frankly, safety strategies that all of us should be implementing that are easily we forget about them because we're just so, busy trying to attract business and trying to go out there and, sell homes and get a sale, right? Well, we need to remember that unfortunately agents for the most part, because of all the media, because of all the branding, have put themselves as a target for some sociopath types. And we're going to talk today about essentially the things that you should be avoiding, or you need to be very careful about. If you want the notes for today's podcast, because we're not going to be able to give you the notes in the show description, but the podcast notes are always available over on harrisrealestatedaily.com, harrisrealestatedaily.com. So yes, that's where you need to go if you want the notes for today's show, harrisrealestatedaily.com. All you've got to do is put your email in and you are off to the races.
All right, so we are on to your safety strategies for smart, savvy agents, which we know all of you are. Since it is Realtor Safety Month, we want to help you to stay safe. And you do face significant risks when meeting with new clients, holding open houses, or showing properties. And in several tragic cases, real estate agents have been victims of violence while doing their jobs. Beverly Carter is probably the most famous or prominent agent from Arkansas. That story was out there a couple of years ago, kidnapped and murdered in 2014 while showing a property.
We had her son on our podcast. Yeah,
that's right. Her death, along with other high-profile cases such as the unsolved murder of Ashley Okland, has led to greater awareness of the dangers that realtors face. That's why we have Realtor Safety Month. So in honor of that, it's crucial to revisit critical safety practices to protect yourself and your colleagues in the field. We're going to go over there's many safety essential tips. We're not going to go through all of them, but we're going to get your brain working.
Now, again, we're going to give you this information. Just go to the harrisrealestatedaily.com and subscribe. But it is very, very important that you realize that most of these issues where realtors have issues with regards to their safety is because they're frankly not taking a more formalized approach working with buyers. That is the reality. When you're not following the information we gave you yesterday with regards to the 8-step, exclusive buyer agency process, where you're not meeting with them formally, you're not getting exclusive sign, you're not following the new guidelines, you are then what Julie and I have, termed a Pop-Tart agent. We got that from Howard Brinton. Those of you in business for a while might remember Howard's Pop-Tart agent, right? The phone rings, you get a text, you get a message on Instagram, and you just pop up, like a Pop-Tart, and you go out there and show the property without knowing anything about the buyer. The days of that being it never was a good idea, a good way to conduct yourself professionally, but now you are not actually following the rules, the guidelines, dare I say the laws, with regards to formally working with the buyer to get the exclusive sign and all the things that we teach you in the ethical real estate professional designation. But the moral of the story is there are going to still be a lot of agents out there who are, not yet accepted the fact that they do have to get exclusive sign, who are still going to be Pop-Tarting. And if you read or if you listen as we present these points to you, you are going to realize that a lot of it has to do with agents simply not being professional.
That's right. A lot of the danger does come from the buyer side, right? Because think how much more typically agents know about a seller, about their house, about the neighborhood before they even show up.
Jules, have you read, I'm sure it's happened, but have you read one story about a buyer or about an agent having an issue with a listing, where their
Not
safety
really.
was in jeopardy? No.
No.
It's always on the buyer side.
That's right, because, it's been more lackadaisical on the buyer side.
It's because the sociopaths out there, the nut jobs, know that they can basically call an agent. An agent's not going to pre-qualify them. An agent's
Nope.
going to show up to show them the property. And, who knows? That's the type of thinking that was prevalent in the previous, with regards to not pre-qualifying. And those days are over. But again, we need to be drilling down on these
Yes.
safety points. So
Okay.
point number 1, Julie.
And we're going to go through these fairly quickly. Number 1, never hold an open house alone. Always have somebody with you, whether it's another agent, a lender, a colleague, maybe your spouse. Follow the open house plan discussed in Premier Coaching. We drill down on that a lot. You and your partner should door knock the neighborhood before the open house to generate traffic, build rapport, and that same partner can work the open house with you, meeting people at the door with a sign-in app while you remain inside to answer questions and engage potential buyers. That's just the smart way to hold an open house. All right, point number 2. Meet new clients in public places first. Schedule your first meeting with potential buyers in a public setting like your office, ideally, a coffee shop, or a neutral meeting room. Avoid meeting at the listing right away. Whether it's your listing or anybody else's, whether it's vacant or anybody else's, you need to be meeting your new clients in public first.
Well, Julie, that's making my point. So can you be meeting a buyer that you maybe just met on Facebook or whatever, just show them a property without having an exclusive signed? That's not an open house. You are acting as an exclusive buyer's agent, and you should not be meeting with them until the agency and the exclusive has been signed. So technically, point number 2 should never be happening now.
Literally never be happening. And what a blessing it is that you now have a
The
legal excuse.
Exactly.
Right?
And remember, all agents are going to have the exclusive signed. Do I believe that all agents are actually going to be, following the new guidelines? No, I do not. Do I believe the ones that are the most successful will be? Yes, I absolutely do. Because guess what? Let's say, for example, a buyer calls on a house. The buyer agent shows up, shows the house, writes the contract, and it turns out that the seller had no intention of paying a buyer's agent commission. It's going to take some agents who are refusing or just reluctant to follow the new guidelines. It's going to take for them to learn the hard way, which is usually learning some, losing money.
Sadly.
Those will be very expensive lessons. That's the reason we are absolutely encouraging all of you to consider becoming members of the Ethical Real Estate Professional designation, the Exclusive Buyer Agency designation. You're going to be learning more about that as we roll that new program out. I know it's going to be an enormous success, and it's going to help every one of you get past these, I think, mooring lines you have doing business the way you have been doing. So text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. This is the turnkey system, whether you're an individual agent or you're a huge brokerage, that you need to give your buyers, your agents, frankly, your buyer agents especially, the comfort and the confidence to go out and get exclusive signed and get back to work.
Well, it's not just a designation. I think it's going to be a movement towards ethical real estate professional because you have to. You need to. This is what everybody's craving.
So I'll tell you the reason I'm afraid to use words like that, and it is afraid because I don't want to deal with all of the unintended consequences of people feeling threatened by the fact that we are indeed starting a movement, because we are. We are going to start a movement. It's going to be ethical real estate professional. We're going to have specific designations under all, there's going to be one for listing agents. There's going to be one for luxury agents. There's going to be one for buyer agents. And all these things are going to be seen as the height of, I think professionalism in real estate.
Me too.
And I don't want to threaten the existing aristocracy. That's the afraid part.
I know.
I don't want our friends at NAR to think that we're trying to do anything, because we're not. I mean, we're not. We are adding something to the industry, though, for the agents that are interested and seriously, serious about the future in their industry and their market, those that are ready to take their business to the next level. Those are the agents that we're going to attract.
Yep.
Not every agent's going to want to do this. Not every agent's going to want to take the pledge. Not every agent's going to want to earn, the designation. It's just a simple fact. We're looking for the best of the best. That's what ethical real estate professional designation is going to be all about. Text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. And we will then invite you to the webinar that we're going to be doing hopefully in a couple weeks to let you know more about that program. Buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372.
All right, back to our safety points. Number 3, trust your gut instincts. If something feels off, don't ignore your instincts. Always be prepared to leave an uncomfortable situation immediately. No deal is worth your safety.
And that means if you're meeting with someone in the first time with the intent of meeting with them about getting the exclusive sign, if your creep radar goes off, just trust your instinct. Your intuition's almost always going to be right.
That's right. So things like don't show homes after dark or unfamiliar areas. Avoid showing properties at night. Make sure you know the neighborhood before you take clients there. Do your homework on both the property and its surroundings to minimize your risk.
And just so you're clear, when you're following our 8-step process, you're going to get that buyer pre-qualified. You're going to, in other words, pre-qualify them for motivation. You're going to be talking with them, asking very specific drill-down questions. Anybody who's serious about buying a home is going to answer those questions, but several of the questions have to do with their financial ability. You're going to know whether they've been to a lender. You're going to know the lender's name. You're going to have the lender's letter. If someone's giving you that level of information, you can then, guess what? Verify that they're for real. Call up the lender. Ask for a copy of the letter. Chances are at that point, you have a real buyer and not just, a lead.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, number 4, practice situational awareness. And I'm going to take a second here and highlight one of my private coaching clients, John Walkinshaw, up in Canada. He is hosting a 1-hour self-protection course for real estate professionals. He wrote to me, it's called that because self-defense starts with the awareness of what's around you and where your exits are, as well as being able to defend yourself in a potential physical confrontation. That's point number 4. Practice situational awareness. So if you're in the Ontario, Canada area, maybe you go to John's event. I think it's a great networking event for his fellow agents as well. So situational awareness, that means always being mindful of your surroundings and assessing the potential risks. For example, when you arrive at a property for a showing, take a moment to observe the area. Are there people loitering nearby? Is the street well lit? Are there any strange cars parked that weren't there before? Practicing situational awareness means being alert to anything that seems unusual or out of place and adjusting your actions. It's okay to leave immediately or call for backup if something feels weird to you. All right, point number 5. You might consider, and I know some of my coaching clients do this, carrying a personal safety device like a personal alarm, pepper spray. There's smart jewelry that can alert authorities in case of an emergency. You can program your iPhone that if you hold the buttons down, that it alerts the people pre-programmed in your emergency list. For example, you can maybe put a tag on your car keys. At least we'll know where your car is. Resources for choosing the right device for you. There's a company called SafeWise. They have reviews and comparisons on different types of safety devices. There's something called the Prepared, detailed advice and recommendations. And concealed carry laws, you can look up for your state at concealedcarry.com. Some people have asked about that. That's a state-by-state law website.
Yeah, and so really, if you're in Texas, you obviously already are carrying concealed.
Probably.
But yeah, ultimately, that's the amazing thing, frankly, about firearms. We're not going to go all, NRA on you guys, but the reality of it is nothing levels the playing field like a firearm. You can be the smallest little demure woman like my wife here, but she pulls out a 40 caliber Glock. The playing field is level.
The end of that.
That is it. So
we have a friend in LA. I remember talking to Jeremy about this. He's a commercial realtor, and he told me that he has a firearm in his car. And I said, "Well, Jeremy, you sell pretty nice stuff. What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, I work all over LA, and I never know if I'm going to get stopped on the freeway, if the lights are going to stop working, if something weird happens. I'm just going to be prepared." And I think that's smart.
It totally is.
Okay, so there's also safety apps. That's point number 6. Safety apps provide real-time tracking, alerts, and emergency communication. Forewarn is probably one of my favorite ones. I know our coaches use this. My coaching clients use this as well. And some of your MLSs have Forewarn for free embedded. It's not expensive, but you can use it through your MLS.
The gist of it is when you get a new client or a new prospective client, you drop their phone number into it, and it gives you a background check on them, just, as much information as will pull up.
You can use just an address. It does lots of cross-referencing, and it'll pull up. It's not specific to real estate. It's lots of different companies and individuals use Forewarn. It's FOREWARN. They'll tell you if they have any felonies. I had a coaching client tell me that she was showing $1 million plus property, and she's in Louisiana, so this is a big property, right? Lots of outbuildings, lots of acreage, and she got the creeps from somebody because she was doing the pre-qualification while she was walking around.
Which is not following our rules.
Not following our rules, okay, but she's all excited, just like the Pop-Tart agent story, all excited to show this property, wants to sell it, of course. She's doing some of the pre-qual, and the husband and wife had answers that were different from each other. And she started thinking, that's a little unusual. I wonder who these people really are. Runs them through Forewarn and finds out that they both have felonies. One of them is passing bad checks. They had all this sketch history. And when she called to follow up after that second showing, She was completely ghosted by them.
Well, there's a better story that you
So,
have than that.
yeah.
Well,
Remind me.
there
I
was a
remember.
neighbor, somebody that moved
too many.
to our community, and they were
yes.
acting abnormally. You tell the rest of the story.
You mean here, the one that I told you about?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm trying to remember. There were so many little stories that center on this couple that had moved here. And, we're all pretty tight-knit community, and people were comparing notes. Like, does this seem a little bit off to you?
Well, they had a birthday party, and some kid got a concussion.
Some kid got a concussion, and then they wanted to go after that family, and it was all this back and forth. They were new. Nobody knew who they were. Anyway, as it turns out, they were using aliases. One of my friends figured that out, and it wasn't just one alias. It was several aliases. They had a huge history of moving. And essentially, people figured they were sketch enough that, let's just say, they no longer live here because the community kind of ran them out. Forewarn, and there's one called Real Safe Agent that allows tracking and emergency calls. Be Safe, the letter B, Safe, shares your location and triggers an SOS alarm if necessary. So these are different things. Those are to track where you are. Forewarn is a background check. So a smart agent, and this is why the MLSs have Forewarn embedded in it, is you get a new buyer, you don't know them from anybody, right? It's not your cousin, it's not a past client. Maybe they called on one of your listings or whatever, or worse, an internet lead. And what are you going to do? Just go show a vacant property? Run them through Forewarn first, not to mention all of the other 8 steps we covered on yesterday's show.
Well, everyone's iPhone comes with Find My, right?
Yes.
So activate Find My, have everyone, the people that are looking after you basically have your phone on their Find My. And so people can know where you are. And then if you're showing something, if you get the creeps, there's a couple techniques that should be obvious to everyone, but you can literally have a phone call going on while you're meeting somebody, and you can just be talking to the person, so the person on the other end of the phone is listening and knowing whether or not you're in good shape, bad shape, and they'll know exactly where you are. I mean, I don't want you guys to get super paranoid, but at the same time, to Julie's earlier point, you got to be situationally aware.
Yes.
Nowadays, when was the last time you guys walked through a major, a place where there's a ton of people? How many people are looking down at their phones? Everybody is, right? They're all zombies. We all become cyborgs, and the phones have become an extension of our bodies. People are not situationally aware. They don't know what's happening, whether or not someone's like sizing them up. Those types of things happen all the time. We are over in Europe in the summer, and we saw that happening all over the place. Julie and I actually practiced something called being situationally aware. When we lived in Georgetown, Texas, we had some friends that were ex-Special Forces guys, and we noticed that their behavior was not normal. Their heads were always on a swivel. If you guys heard that, that was lightning.
Yes,
and
proof that it's live.
And our dog barking, right?
Yeah, that's
exactly. Right. And their heads were always on a swivel, and they had very similar characteristics, especially when we'd go to different. They would always put themselves in a corner. They'd always be looking around. They always had their hands out of their pockets. They were never putting their heads down. They just were trained to always be looking around and being situationally aware. And yet so many of us aren't. Bad guys look for that.
Yeah, just be smart. I mean, I can tell you who the parents in our kids' school work for the FBI and Homeland Security. And they are, if you look at how they interact, you're right. They are more frosty than the average person.
But there's being situationally aware in person, but there's also situationally aware online. You got to be changing your passwords all the time. You have to be doing all kinds of little different things, assuming that, it's like, for example, if you're walking around in an airport and you use the public Wi-Fi that most airports have, and there are tons of instances of this happening. Someone can get into your phone through that public Wi-Fi because you've logged into it. And if you don't have really good passwords, they can hack your stuff. And there's now really amazing apps that are out there that the bad guys have on their phones or their whatevers that are designed to hack into your phone, looking for passwords for all kinds of different access points. But remember, you're using your phone. It's already unlocked. So they don't have to try to guess your password. They're now seeing what you're doing. They can, I want you to be paranoid is what I'm trying to say, because it's going to force you to be more situationally aware, which might avoid you, walking into or, virtually having an experience that changes your life adversely. So point number 7, we already talked about, tell someone where you're going, always inform a friend or a colleague. Really, if you get to the essence of it, don't be a Pop-Tart agent. Follow a formalized process. Every single buyer has to be, you guys hear that?
There it goes again.
I think our dog's louder than the thunder, though.
We may wrap up early. I don't know.
Every single buyer has to be, Max. Julie, could you make Max feel better? Max, our jumbo French bulldog, is having an episode. Okay, take it. Yeah. We let him go to our office today. Max, you blew it. It's no longer take your dog to work day. All right, point number 8: establish an office code word for emergencies for other family to know. So you need to have a word that you share with your wife, your spouse, your husband, your kids, people that you know, love, and care about. That is a secret word that you can use if you ever have a problem. And it doesn't have to be a word which would be weird to say. You could just simply say something like, for example, if I ever, one of the code words, this isn't one for us, but I might call Julie, I might call her Julianne. And so she knows Julianne is somehow me trying to trigger to her, that's her middle name, that somehow there's some issue, right? I've had different, again, special forces guys that have told us about this originally, and they'll use usually a deviation of the name that they typically use. Bad guys aren't going to know that you're communicating with the other person, but you do, and they will as well. So keep that in mind.
That's right. And what does the code word mean when you use it? It means drop everything and change what you're doing, get out of the house, get out of the room, hang up the phone call, any of those things.
Right. So if you're in a situation where you're walking around with your family and all of a sudden you are feeling like there's going to be some sort of horrible thing, you need to have a code word, which is, whatever it is, blue. You're just going to look at them and you're going to say blue. And they know that they're not going to ask questions about why you said blue. No. They're not going to ask you why you're thinking whatever the hell else. They know they are stopping what they're doing. If they're having lunch, they're putting the fork down and they're following you out and they're getting the hell out. That is what code word's all about. Do consider that. Point number 9, don't advertise your listings as vacant.
Avoid highlighting that a property is vacant in your marketing, as that could attract unwanted visitors. That's just smart.
Or in some markets, unwanted, unpaying tenants.
Yeah, squatters.
That you will not be able to get out. Point number 10, keep your phone charged.
Just make sure it's fully charged before showings. Open houses, keep it easily accessible. And the other reason for that is because of the find me feature. If your phone is dead or if it's turned off, it can't be found. All right, which might mean you can't be found. Number 11, park on the street, not in the driveway. We talked about this as a listing thing, but also it gives you a quick exit if necessary, preventing anyone from blocking your car.
I want to add to that. So Julie mentioned before, and I know it's kind of like strange, some of you guys were listening carefully. She said we have a lot of neighbors that are FBI agents and Homeland Security. So why is that? Because they're FBI and Homeland Security obviously have agents and whatnot that live in Puerto Rico. Well, a lot of them choose to live where we live in Dorado, and so we've gotten to know a lot of them. And there was an instance where there was somebody, actually it was the mayor of our town, he was coming home late at night, and he was at an intersection,
right,
and he had a couple bad guys basically rob him in his car. And what happened was it was at a light, and then the car in front of him stopped at the light as normal. He didn't think anything of it. And he pulled his car right up to the bumper just as you normally would. And then the other car that was behind them pulled right up to his bumper.
Yep.
And then the bad guys got out and robbed him. And he couldn't pull his car away because they had him locked in. You guys get it? So this happened. Everyone sort of was worrying what the heck's going on. And so we asked some of our FBI friends about it, to which they then started giving us all the sort of, situationally aware type things that we're sharing with you guys. Same things we learned about from our special forces friends. One of the things they said was when you're ever at an intersection and you're in that same scenario, always leave at least one car space, even if it pisses the people off behind you. Because the other thing, this hasn't happened where we live, but I hear about this happening, frankly, in LA, is the bad guys will get behind you and they'll push your car into the car in front of you or different things like that. So you always have to be situationally aware and thinking about how you're going to possibly evade a potential problem. And
that's just being smart. I mean, that is getting back to situationally aware. When you're driving, when you're at intersections, even like when I'm parking, I always make sure that my car is headed out versus being where there's a car in front of me and I would have to back up to get the car out because then somebody could block me in with a car in front of me. And I don't care where I am, and I feel safe most of the time, right? But you just have to be smart. And this goes to like when you're showing houses, park in the street, don't park in the driveway. Make it so that your car is pointing away. Depends on what the neighborhood is. How are you going to get out of that neighborhood? Okay, so that's easy enough to fix. Number 12, lock your car at showings. Make sure it's locked to prevent somebody hiding inside. That makes sense.
And obviously, don't leave crap in your car that's going to attract people to want to break into your car. All of you
Laptop, phones, etc.
Right. And Julie, I don't know if you knew this. So Julie used to have one of those big Range Rovers. She got sick of it and sold it because it was, a big Range Rover.
Too big.
It was too big. Yeah. So in England, the number one vehicle to be stolen was the new generation of the full-size Land Rover.
Why is that?
And because what happened is that people would, in England, people would park their car on the street. Hardly any of them have garages.
Right.
And they take their keys, which emitted RF signals. That's how the car communicated with the truck.
Right.
And then they put their keys by the front door. And so what bad guys were doing is waiting for these Range Rover owners to come home. And they had RF frequency readers. And so they'd be able to read what the frequency was from the key. And then they put the key down. And then basically they were able to steal the truck, and they didn't need the key because they had the RF frequency.
That's crazy.
Yep. So these are the types of crazy things that happen nowadays.
Yeah, and we're not even going down most of the rabbit hole. So we just want you to be smart. Of course, number 13, we talked about screen your clients before meeting, require photo IDs, pre-qualify clients over the phone before meeting them in person to filter out potential risks. I have several brokers that I coach, and that is an office policy for their agents. You are not to meet with anybody without a photo ID. I think it's fine.
And don't worry about when you're putting these higher levels, these higher thresholds for buyers to essentially be qualified to work with you. Don't think you're going to run off buyers. You will run off buyers, but you're going to run off the buyers that frankly, may have been the types you wanted to have run off in the first place because they were bad guys, and B, the ones that weren't motivated. Motivated buyers, and sellers for that matter, they conduct themselves completely different. They act, what's the word? Oh yeah, motivated. So that means they're going to be willing to play by the rules to accomplish the goal. That's how professionals, demand of their potential clients, follow the rules, fill out the form, where's your photo ID versus, anybody who's not professional. So most of these, I think, issues that happen are for agents that aren't following a consistent professional process every single time.
Yeah, and everybody asked for your photo ID. We didn't go a single place in Europe without having to show our passport ID.
No.
I mean, I had Zoe at the orthodontist the other day, and they wanted my photo ID. It's normal. It's okay. Don't be weird about it. All right, next, require open house visitors to sign in. You should do that anyway for the sake of business, but some recommended open house sign-in apps. Spacio, that's a mobile sign-in app. It collects visitor information digitally. You've got Curb Hero. There's an endless supply. There's like 20 of these. Open Home Pro, some of you guys use. You can collect visitor information, and it also has follow-up tools embedded in that, but make sure everybody is signing in.
Have you heard anything about whether those are more efficient at getting people to sign in versus using a tablet of paper and a pen?
The tablet and paper and pen came back during COVID because nobody wanted to touch an iPad. That became weird for a while. I don't know. I think the main thing is to get them to sign in. I kind of like pencil and paper. What do you think?
I think sure. Both. Yeah. That's what I'd have out. I'd have something that's going to, whatever they're...
Maybe some of these apps automatically check some stuff on them from their name. I'm not sure. I'd have to dig deeper on that.
I doubt it.
I don't know.
Honestly, I doubt it. But
Make them sign into Forward.
Well, you need to be getting them to sign in anyway. It's part of our open house system, so you have leads to follow up with. But yeah, some people will do like raffles,
Yes.
which is you put your name in it, write your name on this thing of paper and put it in. We're going to be raffling off or whatever. And that's another great way to get their information too. Whatever works for you at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Now you talked about this next one, controlling your personal information, change your passwords, etc. Last but not least, and John Walkinshaw is doing this in Canada, take a self-defense class. Regularly practice self-defense techniques so you're prepared to react if the need arises, and stay current on that training. Resources for finding a class, there's something called ClassPass, and Yelp has that. Also, meetup.com can advertise some of these self-defense classes. The police department, the fire department, sometimes fitness centers have self-defense classes. They're not hard to find. And many times they'll have a series of those with different scenarios that you can take, 2 or 3 classes. I think it's a great thing to do with, maybe your friends go together. It's important as a human being, not just because you're in real estate.
And look, you hear about the really tragic things that happen against, practitioners. You hear about the really horrible things that happen against real estate agents, but you're not hearing about, inevitably, the thousands of other things that happen that go unreported. So when Julie and I said we are excited about the changes that are happening in the industry because of the exclusive buyer agency contract process that now has to be abided by everybody, the number one thought in our minds was it's going to get rid of the Pop-Tart behavior. It's going to minimize the likelihood of agents, having any of these problems, right? So just again, as we've been saying consistently for a long time now, embrace the changes. Realize that the greatest fortunes of men and women have always been made during the greatest times of change. And the way to avoid 99% of the problems that agents have out there is simply by following an organized professional process before you meet with a prospective buyer. And again, this is going to be a process that all of you have to go through. It's no longer voluntary to have exclusives signed. And now if you're looking for more of an excuse to learn this information faster, or if you're a broker or a team and you're looking for your agents to basically embrace the idea of using exclusive, you might want to remind them that they would be able to avoid probably 95% of all the potential, criminal type activity that happens out there for the Pop-Tart type agent. You guys get it? So we're out there. We're trying to do our best to protect all of you so you guys can get back to work, stay at work, and become the best version of yourself as real estate practitioners. Your homework from today's podcast, if you've not done so, is subscribe to the daily newsletter. That way you can get all these notes. And just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. harrisrealestatedaily.com is your daily source for all of our latest podcast notes and our latest podcast. And we send you at the end of the week a summary of all those notes from all the previous podcasts as well. I really appreciate a lot of you are sharing the podcast. You're sharing the notes. If you've not yet done so with all your friends and family who are in the real estate business, this is the perfect podcast to share. All of ours are. We always do that in mind, trying to, put you in a position of having true influence as the authority in real estate, not just in the eyes of your consumers, your buyers and your sellers, but also of your fellow real estate practitioners. So use this information, and you can subscribe to harrisrealestatedaily.com, download our notes, listen to the podcast. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.